A History of the Israelitish Nation by Archibald Alexander. Part 1, Section 9. Babel, the Confusion of Tongues. The only remarkable event in the history of the human race for many hundreds of years after the flood was the confounding the language of the people, and thus putting an end to an impious attempt to build a tower whose top should reach to heaven. The professed end of this tower was, quote, to make to themselves a name, lest they should be scattered abroad on the face of the whole earth, end quote. Some have supposed that the people were stupid enough to think that they could build a tower so high that running up to its top, they would be able to escape a second deluge if it should come. Others have, with more probability, supposed that the people, being of one language and all united in one body, they wished to erect a building so high that it might be the wonder of all posterity. A third opinion, entitled to fully as much regard as either of the former, was that it was intended to be a temple for the worship of the heavens, and this accords with the undoubted historic fact that, in after times, there was at Babylon the temple of Belus, an immense structure, said to have been a mile in perpendicular height. From the description of this temple by Herodotus and others, it could be no other than the Tower of Babel. A fourth opinion is that this high tower was erected as a sort of landmark, which was raised so high as to be visible through the extensive plain of Shinar, that the people might not be scattered abroad, nor separated too far from each other. Whatever might have been the real design of this structure, it was viewed as a rebellious act by the King of Heaven. Therefore, a stop was put to the work by a miracle. The account of Moses is the following, quote, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, confusion, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. End quote. This event must have occurred long after the flood, because the population of the earth was now great. No date or era is connected with this history, but it has been supposed that its time could be fixed by the birth of Peleg, the sixth in descent from Noah, concerning whom it is said, quote, for in his days was the earth divided, end quote. Now, if it was certain that the division here referred to was the scattering of the people from Babel, the date of the event can be exactly ascertained. But this word, Peleg, is never used in the history of the confusion of tongues, and in the whole Bible it always means a physical rupture or division. It has to some appeared probable, therefore, that the event here referred to was the rupture of the solid part of the globe, by which a vast chasm was made between lands before united. The effects of the flood upon the shell of the earth were not all terminated in a few years, but large continents, which had by that convulsion been undermined and shaken, might about this time have fallen in, by which the different branches of the human family would be separated. For example, suppose that America was at first united to Africa, but was now divided by the water covering the land, which once spread across the Atlantic Ocean. That such an event had once happened is rendered probable by many appearances, and this would remove all difficulty as to the manner in which human beings and animals found their way to the western continent, concerning which there has been so much conjecture. But however plausible this interpretation may appear, it ought not to be received without the most urgent necessity, for it utterly confounds the chronology of the Bible by taking away one of the essential links from the chain, and renders it impossible to ascertain the age of the world. And of such a convulsion of nature, by which continents once joined were severed, history is totally silent. It seems best, therefore, to adhere to the common understanding of this passage. There has also been much diversity of opinion respecting the precise nature of the effect wrought in the confusion of tongues at Babel. Many eminent critics are of opinion that the confusion had no relation to words, but only to counsels. That, for a while, the people proceeded harmoniously in their work, but at length, providentially, a dissension arose either as to the object of the work or the proper mode of carrying it on. And so the simple interpretation is, they quarrelled and separated from one another. And in confirmation of this opinion, they remark that the word translated language in this chapter is not the one usually employed, but literally signifies lip, the meaning of which in the Hebrew language is more properly counsel or confession, often worship. This opinion may be said to be the most prevalent among critics in the Hebrew tongue, and they plausibly allege that for many hundreds of years after this event, we never read of any diversity of language, but wherever the patriarchs travelled, they seem to have experienced no difficulty on this score. We do, indeed, read of an interpreter between Joseph and his brethren, but they allege that he was merely a mediator who conveyed the words of princes and other exalted personages to their inferiors, an office which is known to have had an existence in ancient times. The affinity of many ancient languages to the Hebrew is also considered as hostile to the common interpretation. Others are of opinion that while the words remained, by a miraculous influence upon the minds of the builders, they fell into a great diversity in their mode of pronunciation, and this, they observe, would answer the end designed just as effectually as a real diversity of tongues. A third and more plausible opinion is that the original language of man was at this time divided into a number of dialects, that one company used one of these and a second another, so that they were unable to hold intercourse in carrying on the work any longer, were obliged to abandon it, and were scattered abroad. But the common opinion, and that which is favoured by our translators, and also by the Greek translators of the Bible, is that God produced miraculously, on this occasion, a number of languages radically different, from which have proceeded the various tongues spoken by the different nations of the earth. And this opinion is favoured by the fact that several of the languages of men seem not to have the smallest resemblance to each other, but to be so different that it is not conceivable that they all proceeded from one root. And it must be confessed, if the object was to scatter men over the face of the earth by interrupting their intercourse with one another, this would be the most effectual of all. It is also in accordance with the tradition of the Jews, who have an opinion among them that the number of languages produced on this occasion was just 72, and that this precise number still remains unaltered. It would seem, therefore, that the common opinion is not only safest, but best supported by probable arguments. It would seem, at first view, that all the inhabitants of the earth were engaged in the enterprise at Babel. Noah was probably still alive, and certainly Shem. But it does not seem probable that these patriarchs had any hand in the work. It is more likely that the daring scheme was confined to the inhabitants of the neighbouring region. Noah and Shem probably never removed from the country where the ark rested. It is, however, useless to inquire what branch of the family of Noah was concerned in this transaction, as there is no history to cast any light on the subject.